They say living in a quiet suburban neighborhood is supposed to be peaceful, but I never expected my own home to become the center of a full-blown HOA nightmare. One morning, I woke up to find a bright orange sign planted in my front yard declaring my property a hazard zone. My heart sank. How could this happen? Who had the authority to make such a claim without any warning? Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a roller coaster that would pull in neighbors, city inspectors, and a woman everyone secretly called Karen. I grabbed my phone and prepared to fight back. But what unfolded was beyond anything I could imagine. Stay with me because this story is going to get wild fast. Before we dive in, if you enjoy dramatic HOA stories and property battles, hit that like button and subscribe, because you won't want to miss a second of this saga. It all started with a sign. I had spent months improving my front yard, planting flowers and trimming the trees to make everything look perfect. Yet one morning, there it was, an official-looking hazard notice from my HOA, complete with bold red letters and a warning about unsafe conditions. I tried to call the HOA office, but the line went straight to voicemail. Confused, I started photographing the sign and preparing to post a quick update on social media. That's when I saw her. The woman I would soon learn was nicknamed Neighborhood Karen by nearly everyone on the block. She was standing across the street with her arms crossed, glaring directly at me. I realized she had called in the complaint, but why? Everything in my yard had been maintained according to HOA rules. I decided it was time to escalate this to the city. I didn't want an argument with a neighbor. I wanted a professional inspector to see my property firsthand. Little did I know, this one call would ignite a series of events that would turn my quiet life upside down. The city inspector arrived mid-morning, clipboard in hand, cautiously stepping onto my property as if entering a war zone. Karen watched from the sidewalk, glaring with the intensity of someone expecting a battle. The inspector took detailed notes, photographed areas of the yard, measured distances between structures, and even tested the soil near the old oak tree that Karen had previously complained about. As he worked, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Hours seemed to stretch into days as the inspector methodically examined everything, documenting the condition of my home with precision. Meanwhile, Karen continued her vigil, occasionally muttering to herself and pacing in ways that made the entire street feel tense. By the end of the inspection, I felt a strange relief. Someone competent had finally assessed the situation. Yet the battle was far from over. The HOA still held power, and Karen was relentless. The following week, things escalated quickly. Notices started appearing in my mailbox, each one more aggressive than the last. They claimed additional violations that seemed entirely fabricated. A slightly leaning fence, a patch of grass that was a fraction longer than HOA regulations allowed, and a tree that was allegedly obstructing views. The letters were signed in formal, authoritative language, but it was clear they were directed by Karen's persistent complaints. I documented every letter, preparing for any potential legal challenge. My neighbors started whispering as I walked past, some expressing sympathy, others curious about the ongoing drama. Rumors spread like wildfire. Karen seemed to thrive on the attention, but I remained focused on the facts. My home was well maintained, the city inspector had confirmed this, and there was no real hazard. Still, the psychological pressure of being labeled a hazard by someone in your own neighborhood was relentless. And I began to notice small acts of passive aggression. A neighbor moving their trash cans to block my driveway, another subtly rearranging their landscaping to cast shadows over my yard. Things took a dramatic turn when the HOA scheduled an official hearing to review the so-called violations. Karen was there, smug and confident, presenting her evidence, a series of photos that she claimed showed dangerous conditions. My own documentation, including the inspector's thorough report, was also presented, showing that every concern was either minor or completely fabricated. The tension in the room was palpable. Other homeowners quietly watched, some nodding in support, others clearly fascinated by the spectacle. The HOA board deliberated for what felt like hours, and every time Karen spoke, I felt the weight of the entire neighborhood pressing down. But the turning point came when the inspector's testimony was read aloud. His professional assessment contradicted nearly every one of Karen's claims, highlighting the absurdity of labeling my home a hazard. A murmur ran through the room, and I could see Karen's confidence beginning to crack. The fallout from the hearing was immediate. The HOA board sent a follow-up notice retracting the hazard declaration and acknowledging the validity of my property maintenance. Karen, however, was not ready to give up. She began a campaign of subtle sabotage, from anonymous online posts spreading misinformation about my home to attempts at rallying neighbors to reassess my yard. I responded with calm documentation and transparency, sharing photos, inspection reports, and a detailed timeline of events with my neighbors. Slowly, the community began to see the pattern. The so-called hazard was a personal vendetta, not a genuine safety concern. My home became a symbol of standing up to unreasonable complaints, and even some of Karen's supporters started questioning her motives. I realized the battle wasn't just about my property. It was about neighborhood dynamics, power, and the lengths some people will go to impose control over others. Just when it seemed the drama was winding down, Karen escalated once more. She contacted local media, claiming that my property posed a risk to public safety. A small news crew showed up one morning, cameras rolling, as she pointed to my yard and described the hazard. I remained composed, inviting the reporters to examine my documentation and the inspector's report. The journalists were thorough, asking questions and comparing the claims with the facts. By the end of the segment, it was clear that Karen's narrative didn't hold up under scrutiny. The story aired, showing my home in its normal, well-maintained state, and the hazard declaration was portrayed as unfounded. Karen's influence began to diminish rapidly as neighbors saw her actions in a new light. The city inspector even made a public statement reaffirming the safety and condition of my property, putting an official stamp on what I already knew. The truth was on my side. In the aftermath, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the experience left a lasting impression. My home was no longer just a place to live. It was a testament to resilience, documentation, and the importance of professional oversight in neighborhood disputes. Karen eventually moved on to other complaints, but her reputation had been permanently affected. The HOA updated their procedures, requiring more substantial evidence before issuing hazard notices, and neighbors became more cautious about taking personal vendettas too far. I continued to maintain my yard meticulously, not just for appearances, but as a reminder of the months-long struggle I had endured. The incident brought my community closer in some ways, as neighbors began to communicate more openly and support each other against unreasonable complaints. I learned the power of patience, documentation, and the importance of standing firm even when the odds seem stacked against you. If you enjoyed this wild HOA drama and want to see more stories of neighborhood battles, property disputes, and people pushing the limits of entitlement, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next jaw-dropping story, and leave a comment sharing your own HOA or neighborhood experiences. You might see your story featured in our next video. Stay tuned, because in this neighborhood, drama is never far away.